Hello, Golma viewers. Welcome back to Golma Conversations. As usual, we are back with interesting topics to share with you guys. And I was flipping through my app this morning, Flipboard, just reading, just looking for bizarre stories. Actually, I wasn't looking for bizarre stories, but I realized that most of the stories that I was reading were just bizarre, out of this world, things that you don't really expect. And the first one is about a virtual city called Decentraland. So now that's where it's gone now.
Decentraland.
Yeah. I guess it's much more expensive to build an actual city. It's much simpler to have a virtual one. I'm not knocking the idea, by the way,
It sounds interesting.
Yeah, it does sound interesting. So, any thoughts on that?
Not my cup of tea.
Not your cup of tea.
It sounds like one of those.
No, look, well, hey, it's just not for me, right? I like things that are tangible. I like things that are grounded in reality. I'm a very, not to say material, not materialistic, sorry, but I like things grounded in firm reality. So spending my whole day in virtual reality or buying or spending so much money buying virtual land, not my cup of tea.
Okay.
Well, I think, you know what? It caters for a certain person. I would take it as a gamer's paradise. Those guys who are always on the PC, who believe in, the virtual world. I've played a couple of games where, it's actually very interesting. You actually move around the city, you buy this, you do that, kind of thing. I think it becomes, crypto or blockchain is including everybody into the mix. Because there are those people that don't fit into society that well, that don't do well in the real world, that in contrary, the real world is not their cup of tea. But if they're behind their computer and they're in that virtual world, they can actually be someone very important in comparison to the real world. And I actually think when if you look at it deeper, it actually creates more jobs because you're going to need to improve those cities just like in the real world, because the first concept will be basic. And as it improves, as it gets popular and more people get included into it, it becomes an ecosystem. Before you know it, you are attaching that virtual world to this real world where instead of selling virtual stuff in your shop, you can add a link to a real shop in the real world. I mean, I'm just saying the possibilities are endless with that kind of thing. So, you know what I say? I like it. I like the sound of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting. Well, I'm sure you guys are wondering, why are you guys talking about these bizarre stories? It's just so that you know that the crypto universe is that vast. There's so many things happening, and we're glad to be a part of that. And it's for people to actually know that this isn't something new and something that's, very far from being mainstream. It's growing in different ways, and this is some of those ways. The way I interpreted this whole concept of a virtual city is they actually want the city to trade in cryptocurrency. So you will have people trading their goods and services within the city. So it's sort of, I think you're buying property within that city so you can have space to operate your business.
Okay.
So, for example, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section below. For example, if I am a shoe vendor, I'm going to buy my property in the city and I'm going to be advertising in that city, and people will buy my stuff with cryptocurrency in that city. So maybe it's a way of transforming e-commerce.
Yeah.
From just saying, let's see which shoes, okay, click, to where you're actually traveling in the city. You see a store there.
It makes it interesting,
Yeah,
I know.
It makes it interesting. Although, at the same time, I feel like it it moves us towards that age that people fear so much, where you won't even need your real world. You'll be so much concentrating
Get
on
disconnected with humanity.
creating your little matrix of
Yeah.
your own.
That's exactly why I say it's not my cup of tea. What I see from the financial technology revolution is that we're supposed to be repairing the financial system. The financial system, structured as it is today, is the reason why we don't have interesting cities. Because investment and loans are only channeled to specific parts, and they're not the parts that serve everyone. So this to me feels a little bit too much like escapism.
Yeah.
Let's change the financial system, repair our cities, where we could actually have real interesting cities to roam around. Real interesting businesses, real interesting shops, grounded in reality.
Okay, we're moving on to the next story.
Please do before I get fired up.
But just to say, just one last remark. It's also good to escape reality just for a little bit, to experience other forms of reality. And who knows, maybe we'll end up with, like, for those of you that watch Rick and Morty, will end up with like 1 million alternative universes. That's just my crazy talk. But we're going to move on to the next story. Okay, we want to talk about Dash currency in Venezuela. Okay, for the past month or so, we have been discussing asset-backed cryptocurrencies. And I remember us discussing the Venezuelan petro and how they came up with that cryptocurrency in order to counter the effects of sanctions on that particular country. Now, what's happening is, because they've devalued their currency by 95% and pegged it to the Venezuelan petro, I think there's a demand for more cryptocurrency, and the petro is not able to fulfill all the financial needs of the country. And people have sort of dumped the local fiat currency, introducing a multi cryptocurrency system. So part of that multi cryptocurrency system is Dash. And from what I read in the article, they signed a deal with a mobile cryptocurrency company that has cryptocurrency that functions on mobile devices. I think it's to simplify the process, right? Because it's obviously difficult to trade when you're busy trying to figure out your wallet address, and then you do this,
like
and then
that.
you send it to this wallet address. Like, it becomes complicated.
I remember Ruben spoke about it last time, and you're like, crypto is getting there. The moment we get to simplify cryptocurrency, like the way, the current way things are done, where you have a Visa card or EcoCash in Zimbabwe, what we use, and things like that, or just tap and go.
Yeah.
If we get there, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So these guys are they're doing that. They're simplifying it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's interesting for me is they're saying that they have vendors such as like these international brands of like coffee and fast food and whatever registering with Dash as merchants.
Yeah.
And I found that really bizarre.
It is.
That they're completely doing away with fiat currency as a country, because the more people that are going to be using it, and if they find it efficient, then we're going to have, a country that's literally functioning on digital assets. And
true. And I like the part where Venezuela is also adopting Dash, because one obstacle with Venezuela, in my eyes, is the corruption. And if there's a cryptocurrency they could trade with that is not in their control, that is not centralized, directed by them, it actually boosts more confidence. It actually helps them out to say, they don't have power over Dash. So they can't manipulate it in the way we've heard that, government officials have been trying to manipulate it to find a way to be corrupt. So it's a good way to go.
yeah.
I wish it was sort of backed or tied to some sort of production, though, because when an economy collapses, or when we see hyperinflation, this is standard economic thinking that hyperinflation is caused by too much money printing. But I like to take a step back and wonder, like, what caused the desire to print money? Sometimes it's a failed attempt at a sort of Keynesian economics, saying that output is slowing down, and jobs are not, we don't have a lot of new jobs, so let's print money to sort of resuscitate the economy or to kick it back up type of thing. So the currency reform, accepting Dash is a sort of currency reform, right? Because the Bolivar, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is losing favor amongst the people.
Yeah.
The Petro comes in. That got sort of a lukewarm reception in the crypto community.
Yeah.
It didn't help, of course, that the American authorities said that, Americans don't touch this, so it limited the amount of people internationally who could participate. So then they accept Dash. It's wonderful in that it's better than the fiat currency, as you mentioned, which is why I actually liked the Petro, or the idea of the Petro, because if it was a currency completely backed by oil, in my mind, I thought PDVSA, the state oil company, was going to increase output
Yeah.
to sort of back the introduction of that currency.
Yeah.
So
That makes
that to me was an interesting idea. Unfortunately, it was fraught with so many irregularities that it didn't get that widespread adoption that we would have wanted. But that's
tempered with oil. If you want to bake your currency with oil, we've said it down again. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I have a question. Like I know we're constantly saying that it's backed by oil, and they've said that I don't know if it's a single petrol is equivalent to a barrel.
I'm not sure, but that's a really high valuation because let me just search
I
for
don't know
the.
how much it is, but there was a certain amount of petrol currency that was quantified as equivalent to a
Certain
barrel
amount of oil.
of oil. Yeah.
Yeah, because one barrel of oil in New York right now, this is $68.95.
Okay.
So that would be really, really high.
Yeah.
I'm not. Have to keep on looking into.
Check quickly.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, whilst you're checking, I wanted to ask if it's backed by oil that's been extracted or by oil reserves. Because we've never really given that clarity. I'm not.
You'd have to go through the white paper extensively.
Actually, you are right. One coin is backed by a barrel of oil. This is
Yeah.
the claim that the government was.
So that's
that
pretty
was
much.
making. That's a really high
that's
valuation.
power.
Yeah.
that's power.
Yeah.
That'll be a powerful coin. So,
And from what I hear, like in terms of their ICO, they're doing really well,
all right.
even with U.S. citizens refraining from partaking. So that's pretty.
It's a
interesting.
rebellion.
I think it just shows the impact of asset-backed cryptocurrency on people that are
True.
looking to store value. They will do it at whatever costs. Like it's not a Western movement. It's not an Eastern movement. It's just a world movement of people that are just thinking, you know what, I can't store my value and wealth in a piece of paper that keeps devaluing by the day. I
So-
would rather,
So this is a CNBC article from the 20th of February this year, and they said the oil is yet to be pumped. So I think that's why the CFTC in America sort of said, well, no, Americans don't buy the petro because it's a futures contract.
yeah.
So they're trying to
okay.
raise finance. If they keep it within the oil sector, I guess they would use the money to increase oil production if they wanted to back it.
Yeah.
So the oil hadn't been pumped.
Now, you
This
see,
is
that's
according to
the
CNBC.
tricky part because, I like the idea and everything,
But they intend on pumping the oil after getting the money.
yeah, my question is, it goes back to the trust factor that I was talking about yesterday.
Yeah.
And that, are they trustworthy? Will they deliver on that?
Yeah, I think that this is where this technology space or the technology in this space allows, to take back some of that trust. If we could have some way of putting that oil production on the blockchain, being open, being transparent about production from PDVSA, it would have been possible. I think we could have had that, the success of that token. Now the problem is that the company, PDVSA, the state oil company,
Yeah.
isn't doing very well. Output has been declining for some time now. So there's a challenge. So fundamentally, I have no problem with committing funds to future work. I think that's okay. That's investment in general, right? Like
Yeah.
when a company, has an IPO, you're buying shares and anticipating that they'll work in the future. If there's a corporate bond that is put out onto the market, we buy it in anticipation that they're going to do work in the future. So that's okay. That for me is not a problem. The challenge is having transparency in that production process. I think that would have enhanced the marketability and the strength of the petro.
So in
They
other words,
wouldn't
it's
have
better
had to rely on Dash to come
Dash
in
to come in
Yeah.
because they
if-
would have
yes.
had the petro, working quite well.
So maybe the advent of Dash into the Venezuelan economy kind of shows how the business community is much more trusting of Dash than the actual government issued.
It's an issue of centralization, actually, especially with the government issued petrol. Like I said, with me, it's a trust issue. They still need to prove themselves that whoever's on their team is not going to manipulate whatever's going to happen there. Is it their tokens are pre-mined?
Yeah.
You see now. So there's
Who's to say they won't just create more tokens?
Yeah,
and
you
we'll have, for
so
the first time in history, inflation of cryptocurrency.
you see now.
I just don't know. Maybe.
That's what I'm saying. Blockchain and have that transparency. Have periodic reporting of what it is that you're doing. Come out into the open and tell people the work that you're doing. I think when that type of process happens over time, then I might not need to trust you, the person, as long as I can trust the records that are coming out, because I can tell that so many barrels of oil have been produced, and that's it may be a step away from the traditional libertarian sort of values of trustless, that ideal that we have in the cryptocurrency space. But if we could have international auditors, whoever would want to take on that risk, because there's politics at play between Venezuela and the United States, but if we could have trusted auditors, especially people who are very open to the sort of blockchain technology, they could come and audit how much oil is being produced by PDVSA and how much is, committed to the petro. And I think we could have that where the trust will grow over time, and you wouldn't have to have this deficit of trust that you worry about all the time.
Yeah, that's true. I'm interested in this particular case, though. Like, my eyes are always on Venezuela. I really want to see how it turns out, because think about it on the flip side. If it does work out, guys, people are going to be scrambling for that petrol on the market as soon as they list it on the exchange.
Imagine the countries that are going to try and follow suit.
Yeah.
It's going to be trouble for the dollar.
It's like that one kid that stands up to the bully, and then you realize, oh, the bully can be beaten, and then everybody's like, yeah, let's beat him up.
Well, actually, the bully can be ignored, because the best way to beat this bully is to ignore him. Say, you know what? Okay, keep your money.
No, actually, I'm kidding. Well, we're moving on to our last.
Too much
story.
anti-American.
Our last story is about cryptocurrency influencing the future of freedom. Now, this was a very interesting one. I just want to quickly open my device because there are certain areas of the article that really hit home for me. First of all, the writer starts talking about how Bitcoin has been growing since 2009, and the interesting point they raised is what people haven't heard much about is how Bitcoin, but we're going to say cryptocurrency, can play a role in human rights and can give people who use it more financial and political freedom.
Yeah.
So this is something that I've never really heard anyone discuss in depth. I mean, there is a concept of being sovereign as an individual, and we never really experienced that because of a centralized way of governing. I mean, there's certain regions of this world that never experienced that, and I think that's just what they're their say. I don't know if they're advocating for people to overthrow their governments, but it's like they're trying to say that it's an option for you to actually directly have a say in where your funds go and who you give them to, when you give them to the person, and where you store your value, and who you do business with. Because think about it, if location is a non-factor,
Tell me about it.
then what stops me from doing business with you? Nothing.
Nothing.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
So it sort of gives people that freedom to say, we can trade amongst ourselves. As long as I acknowledge, recognize your currency, I can use it.
Once you realize that there are no borders with cryptocurrency, let's not just say Bitcoin, but if me and you agree on something, why should someone have the right to come in between and say, no, you shouldn't trade with this person because I say so?
Yeah.
So at the moment, they're unable. My question is, at the moment, they're unable to do that. But don't you think pretty soon they will drop the hammer on this? If governments come together and say, look, we're losing a hold of this. People are getting free, like the article says. It's the future of freedom. Don't you think they will drop the hammer soon?
I don't necessarily think about it about them dropping the hammer. The question that comes from me is how long can you ride it? Because look, freedom, international currency, great, it sounds good, but what's the foundation of that currency? Right, that's the thing for me. I'm very skeptical about effectively not fiat in the sense that it's backed by government authority, but what's the underlying value
Of
behind the cryptocurrency? This is my concern.
That matters a lot. Yeah.
Because we can have this idealistic view of, global, individual sovereignty, if you want to put it that way. But I think we have to have a global cryptocurrency that is, underpinned by concrete value. That way we can have a long-term means of transaction, perhaps, or long-term means of storing value. I think that's more beneficial. So Bitcoin is special, and I do like Bitcoin because Bitcoin, there's a specific amount of Bitcoin that's there, and you cannot create more than that. It's capped.
Yeah.
So that's great. At least it's like gold in one respect, right?
Yeah.
But it can still fall to zero. That's my problem. So if we're talking about, I know we can't, have eternal freedom. Perhaps that's outside of our ability. But I like something that's much longer term. So I think it has to be an asset-backed cryptocurrency that can actually take us to that international level of trade. But the question then becomes, perhaps this is where it dovetails with Eddie's point, that if we have an international asset-backed cryptocurrency, perhaps that's the avenue through which governments can then sort of collapse the entire project. Because once you're talking about a commodity and the movement of that commodity globally, so I'm not saying that by using the cryptocurrency you're moving the commodity, but you still have to back it, and the cryptocurrency has to be backed by something, and it has to be stored somewhere. And if they wanted to shut it down, I suppose you could do that. But I think I think that's sort of like an apocalyptic sort of far off thing.
It is.
I think if we're dealing in precious commodities, gold, platinum, silver, I think those markets are active enough that they're not going to want to disrupt them. So you could still have that cryptocurrency, perhaps with a little bit more regulation, because there are still some concerns to be addressed within the crypto space. But I think you can have that, and it will hold. And it's going to be a very competitive financial instrument. A lot of people are going to be using them, those asset-backed cryptocurrencies in the future to settle their international obligations. I think so.
Yeah. I do agree with you that it would make much more sense if it's an asset-backed cryptocurrency that would be facilitating such. But I think currently the only challenge we have is the asset-backed cryptocurrencies are not as popular as Bitcoin. So in terms of mass adoption, it seems like Bitcoin is leading. But perhaps maybe in a few years' time, when people have developed more appreciation for asset-backed cryptocurrencies, then maybe it will be.
But I don't think that's a concern. Like, Bitcoin is big, yes. I mean, market cap over 200 billion or right around there. But look, if we take the number of people in the world and sort of say how many people have interacted with cryptocurrency, it's a tiny fraction. I would be surprised if it's much more than 1% of the population globally. So we're still so early enough that you can have new entrants into the market. Right. And at any rate, big monopolies have never been able to stand up against innovation. I'm not saying that Bitcoin is. I just want to make it clear that I'm not saying that Bitcoin is a monopoly. It isn't, but it is the go-to technology or the go-to cryptocurrency right now.
Yeah.
But people can still discover other, perhaps more useful and more valuable to them, cryptocurrencies that can take the place of Bitcoin.
Okay, maybe. I still feel like it's something that will take time. The reason why I'm saying that is because from what I've noticed, Bitcoin seems to be the unofficial global cryptocurrency. It hasn't declared itself that, but it seems like it. And if you look on the exchange, how many times do you see maybe the top 20 currencies being pegged against Bitcoin? Kind of like how all currencies are always pegged according to the dollar. Like, we've gained so much against the dollar, and why does it matter whether you gain against the dollar? It's because the dollar is the global currency. So maybe there's an element of monopoly. I know you don't want to offend them, but sorry guys, there is an element.
But this is the difference. I think this is the important difference between cryptocurrency and fiat currencies and like the global market for fiat currencies.
Yeah.
International trade is dictated in American dollars. So if you want to sell something here on the African continent to the DRC, chances are you're going to settle that transaction in US dollars because it's the de facto global currency of trade. But with cryptocurrency, you don't have that. I think it's just a question of people's choice. There's no official diktat that sort of says this shall be settled in this currency. So that's why I'm hopeful that, look, we can have people realizing that perhaps Bitcoin has its place and it has its popularity. We should leave room for other, perhaps more valuable cryptocurrencies coming in and providing a greater use case than Bitcoin.
I think it's also a matter of time. Because if things go the way I see them going in the near future, where the US dollar is really suffocating right now, you can see the cracks. If you notice the way people type Bitcoin to the dollar to say, so one Bitcoin is equal to $7,000. When you remove the dollar out of the equation, right? What is it that you're going to compare it to? Or you see, and what value does it really hold? I'll give you an example of an asset-backed cryptocurrency, let's say a gold-backed cryptocurrency, where even if you remove the US dollar, even if you remove this, you can still say this coin is equal to so much gold. Because gold will always be there. Yeah. It has been there. So it's just a matter of awareness. People don't realize it yet, the value of asset-backed cryptocurrency or asset-backed currency, even if when fiat was gold-backed, it was strong. So the moment people realize that, the moment the dollar dies, I don't see...
That's very interesting.
There's
what you're saying is, sorry to interject.
All right.
You're saying that there seems to be a marriage that's still existent between cryptocurrency and fiat currency because it's always pegged against fiat currency that people are trying to do away with, as opposed to the actual asset.
That's my point.
That's pretty interesting. I never thought of it.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of time. When fiat dies or when the fiat falls,
dies.
Yeah, don't. Okay, I'm not a prophet of doom, but I'm just saying all things come to an end. The only thing so far that's been holding holding its ground is gold. I mean, fiat, of a lot of currencies that have
Yeah.
gone to zero. So it's just a matter of time.
Okay, moving on to just the political side of things. There's something interesting that I saw in the article. I don't know if it's offensive for me to say it's kind of funny because, all right, so I'm just going to read here. It says, technology's role is somewhat paradoxical in this crossroads. Some forms can serve as a tool of control for governments or companies, while other forms put more power in the hands of citizens. The Chinese government, Gladstein pointed out, keeps close tabs on its citizens' behavior, location, finances, and communication. Facial recognition technology, smartphone apps, surveillance drones, and smart glasses are all used to gather information as people go about their daily lives. And this information is fed into the country's social credit system.
Uh-oh.
That's just so deep, guys.
That's
Like, do you know the
intrusive.
credit score? Do you know credit score? Anybody knows it? I don't know my credit score. Like, I don't know if I should call that freedom or, but yeah. Anyway, that's the topic for another day. And then it says here, obedient citizens gain privileges and praise, while dissidents, intellectuals, criminals, and other non-conformants can be denied access to services. So that means if you are, maybe you're an offender, you've committed a crime, you were convicted of a crime before, or if they just view you as a non-conformant to the system of China, then they'll deny you access to services like banking services and.
So you're actually being liberated by crypto because the system at hand, has stopped you. If you don't ride, you die.
Yeah, it's deemed you as unworthy.
Is unworthy. Even for things that, like now we're saying if you have done something wrong or you're an offender in such a sense. But sometimes the system is unjust, and just because you don't agree with them, you didn't necessarily do anything wrong. They will still do that to you. And you have no other choice than to play ball because they hold a monopoly on everything. So yes, crypto is actually liberating people because there is an alternative route to go to.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they don't have control over it.
Yeah. Now here's the interesting part. I want to pose this. I want to know what Ruben thinks about this one because and it says here, and that's not all. Predictive policing is real in China today. If the regime thinks your social credit score is indicative that you might do something wrong, they can come arrest you before you've committed a crime.
What?
Now, how bizarre is that?
That's the most imaginative form of policing I've ever heard of.
Wow.
But I wonder though. It's a very interesting technology-driven way of policing a country. I wonder if that's informed by or inspired by the fact that they have a population of over 1 billion people. So perhaps they feel that the police force would not be able to handle that many people, or I don't know what it is. But that's, I think, the only thing I would want to call it at this moment in time is imaginative.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's straight up
Yeah.
wrong. You know why I say that? It's because you can never accurately predict human behavior. You can speculate, based on this and that, but you can never really get it right most of the time.
Yeah.
Especially if you're basing it on somebody's credit score. I mean, come on.
It's a human rights violation. That's what it is.
Because I do know that, sorry, before you speak, I do know that external forces influence one's behavior, right? Maybe you're under financial pressure and they think that you're most likely to commit a crime because of your financial status or whatever. But it doesn't really make sense, because at the end of the day, it's not just about the external forces or conditions or environment of the person, but there is something that we all possess that is called individuality.
Yeah.
Which is why you find that two people raised in the same house and the same environment with the same parents turn out differently.
And why are they all up in people's business?
It's like, I
That
feel like
much.
they're breathing down
Right? It's bad.
the necks of the population.
So for me, it's in my understanding of it, I think there's a difference between your financial, like what is in American terms a credit score, and the score that they're talking about here in China. I think they monitor a lot more, not just your financial history.
Yeah.
Do I believe it's right? The reason why I say it's imaginative, I don't want that to sound positive. I'm saying that it rubs against sort of my beliefs about criminal justice and the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
I was raised in a tradition where you're assumed innocent and you have to be proven guilty. So that's that. In that sense, it's imaginative. It perhaps is dangerous.
Yeah.
To do that, but I suppose that there's the bigger question about data and conventional systems and how data basically we're the product. Whenever we interact with social media, with a lot of these institutions, tech, we're giving up so much information, and in the Western world, the same information is used to market to us, because then Google knows what you like, so the AdWords in your Gmail, on what they recommend on YouTube, all this stuff comes up, right? So that's we sort of accept that, but the way this technology is being used in China, I want to say again, I don't know for a fact. The way it is alleged to be used, that's imaginative, bordering on dangerous.
Yeah. For people that are wondering, like, why was Gladstein talking about it? He was saying, imagine you're living in such a country. That would be very difficult for you. So if you want to do international transactions, you have to trust the institutions. You have to trust the government. You can't go around it. There's no way out of it. It's very difficult, and because of that, those that only have the centralized system to look up to and are rejected, then they've got nowhere to turn to.
It's prison.
So he's saying they even have the power to stop your money. Like, where are you sending your money? Oh no, not to that country. There's a third party, there's a person, a gatekeeper that tells you it's your money, but we can tell you what to do with your money. And what he's saying is now we have what is called the unstoppable money. They can't stop you from sending out your Bitcoin to another wallet address.
Yeah, so it's I don't want to get too excited because it all sounds good. The current governments that we have are underpinned by a philosophy that has worked.
Yeah.
Not perfectly, but they've worked. Large parts of the world for a long period of time. So when we say sovereignty and we take it down to the individual, that's a big, very, very big statement, because traditional Western political philosophy says that we give up our individual sovereignty to the state so that the state can protect us. So once you take that down from the state, like money is the last thing that governments have a true monopoly on. Once we take that away, it's a very, very big question. I think some of those questions would probably be beyond the scope of this conversation, it is huge.
It is.
Where we're taking that.
Yeah, and because it's getting to that dangerous zone, we're just not gonna.
I thought you were gonna say because we're getting to
lunch.
the dangerous zone of hunger.
Anyway, attention, ladies and gentlemen, mostly gentlemen. It's lunchtime. We are sad to leave you guys. As usual, we enjoy, having these discussions and sharing them with you. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We have to go. please leave a comment in the section below and let us know what you think. You know, did you like Eddie not wearing a tie? Did you like Ruben when he was home? Anything that you feel you want to contribute to this discussion is more than welcome. Like the video, give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and also share it. And remember to subscribe to the channel. We're putting out content on a daily basis, so you'll be able to see us come to you and keep you company when you are looking for, you know, people that have very strong opinions about stuff. Until next time, from the team, a joint bye-bye and signing out.